With the Monster Rhino trainer, Rogue is quickly creating one of the most versatile power rack systems out there. We've got a belt squat integrated into a rack with a functional trainer, and we can't forget the lat pull down in low row, all in a fairly compact footprint. Although, fair warning, there are a few ways to build this and a lot of options and things to consider as Rogue offers this with and without the functional trainer. This review focuses on the Rhino version, but we've also reviewed the single stack without the Rhino and the twin stack as well. And just to keep things really interesting, I've got some news on other variations coming out. Oh yeah, and if you're looking at something like this, you're probably looking at some of the dozens of other options we've seen and reviewed. Suffice it to say, we're going to make a lot of comparisons as we talk about how the various parts of the Rhino trainer work together. I tend to say more parts, more problems, and while I think this is a great system, it has its issues and trade-offs as well. But before we get into all of that, a word from our sponsor. It's me. I had to sell my Rogue FM6 and quite a few other things to buy this. So if you enjoy our content, then please press subscribe, because unlike this rack, it's free, and please use our affiliate links when you buy something, because I'm being completely honest when I say, as a small family-owned channel, we can't continue to do this without your support. So thank you. The Rhino trainer can do a little bit of everything. I don't think anyone's questioning this thing's versatility. I mean, any piece you can curl on is worth your money, right? But it's also pretty expensive, although the build quality is absurd, and it's probably best to think of this as 3 or maybe 4 separate pieces. At least that's what I tell my wife, because it's much cheaper to buy an all-in-one combination like this than it is to get the pieces individually. There's the rack, functional trainer, Rhino belt squat, and the lat pull down with a low row. Just to get the price out of the way up front, so Mr. "Thanks for wasting my time, I wouldn't have watched this video if I knew what it cost" doesn't yell at me, the Rhino trainer add-on starts at $2,800 shipped and goes to about $5,000 depending on the configuration. Just realize if you don't already have a rack to install this on, and you're purchasing that as well, you're looking at a cost of around $4,000 or all the way up to over $7,000 depending on how wild you get with your build. That's a big price swing, and that's because there are a lot of ways to configure this and it can get confusing. So let's break it down. The Rhino trainer is built on Rogue's Monster Rack, which is made from 11-gauge steel and uses 3x3 structural members with 1-inch holes and 2-inch hole spacing. 3x3 racks are the pinnacle for home gyms. They're modular, so you can build off of them in any direction or add attachments from other manufacturers onto them. So for example, my twin stack has a Voltra and other things on it, and if you watch our reviews, you'll see me swap a huge assortment of accessories between my 3x3 racks. Rogue's Monster Racks can be built quite a few ways, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of a 4-post half rack like ours versus a 6-post, but the hardest part of picking a Rogue rack may end up being picking the finish. Not because there's 13 of them to choose from, but because the color renderings suck, and I feel like I'm over here trying to single-handedly document the actual colors. At this point, I must have paid them enough that they can afford some actual pictures, right? To give you some perspective on our build, our half rack is 90 inches tall and is using 24-inch deep cross members, although you need about another 30 inches of space behind the rack so you can comfortably load 45-pound plates on the Rhino trolley. I tend to prefer 6-post racks, but with a Rhino, there's some trade-offs. For one, a 6-post rack that's 30 inches deep, like our single stack, can get very long with that Rhino trolley tacked onto the back. I do like having a full cage, and a 6-post gives you more space to store things. They don't sacrifice any functionality and aren't as cluttered. So for example, my VTS Smith attachment is installed on my 6-post center uprights where it doesn't get in the way, and a 6-post rack comes with a pull-up bar, whereas a 4-post half rack doesn't. You can overcome the pull-up bar on a 4-post with a third-party solution, but a compact setup like this will feel a little more cramped since you only have one set of uprights to work off of. Here's a good example. The trolleys and cables don't interfere with the lat pull down, but if you're not careful, you can smash one into the other. Also, at 6 foot tall, while the trolleys aren't in my way during squats, I do remove the D handles so they're not banging into my plates. Not a big deal for me, and on a 100-inch tall rack, that wouldn't be an issue. Also, this may be one of those times where you wish you had a few more inches, because while I can flat bench fine off this rack as my wife stares down on me from the Rhino platform, incline benching on a 4-post Rhino is problematic. Some benches won't allow you to incline at all, and even those that do, like Prime's Shorty bench, only allow you to get to 20 degrees before the bar is too far away to safely unrack and re-rack. And because of the low row mounting plate, you can no longer use the Super Bench Pro trick of sliding the bench under the Rhino platform. Easy enough to fix, right? Just allow us to extend the depth of the half rack to give us more room, like we can already do with the Rhino trainer version of this rack, except for whatever reason, we don't have that option with the functional trainer version of the Rhino. All they have to do is extend the cables a few inches. It's not a hard fix, and one I hope to see them implement, as Rogue has been very responsive in addressing some of our criticisms from our twin stack review. The Rhino belt squat is where things can get a little confusing, because the Rhino has been around for years, so there's currently 4 versions available. But the Rhino trainer integrates the rack, functional trainer, lat pull down, and low row all together. The older versions of the Rhino only have the belt squat. You could technically DIY or use something like the Surplus Strength UPS to gain the lat pull down and low row functionality, but now that Rogue has created this system, they've combined everything. If you're not interested in the functional trainer elements, you can buy the Rhino trainer without the functional trainer, which would save you quite a bit. If you're not familiar with the Rhino, let me show you how it works and explain why you may want a belt squat. The Rhino is a cable-based system, meaning you load the Rhino trolley and the trolley is connected to you by a pulley system. The beauty and appeal of the Rhino is in its versatility. So yes, the belt squat was invented to allow you to squat without having to load the spine. With a belt squat, the load is on your hips, which not only allows people to work around back or shoulder issues, but it's helpful if you're trying to get more volume or accessory work in as well. It works very well for that purpose, and that's great. Who doesn't love more volume on leg day? Literally anyone who isn't a psychopath. Although, as someone whose goal in life is to continue training so that I can keep up with my kids, I have to say I love belt squats for that reason. The range of motion on the Rhino is great, and it works well for me at 6 foot tall, as well as Winnie at 5'6", which is an area we ran into problems with the Squat Max. Winnie was pretty close to running out of space on it. The Rhino has an adjustable belt like the Squat Max, where you clip in depending on your height, but whereas that's the only adjustability on the Squat Max, with the Rhino you can change the height of the handles and your starting position. Just clip the Rhino horn where you want it so that there's no load on you or the cable while you get into position and lift off. I will say, while I like the beefy, kind of rigid build of the Rhino belt, Winnie finds it less comfortable as the sides dig into her inner thighs. So if any of my mostly male viewer base also has a Barbie doll-like waist, then Spud Inc.'s pillow belt may be a bit more comfortable to you. The Rhino, like the lat pull down and low row, uses a 1-to-1 pulley ratio, which means you're lifting the exact weight you load. And unlike when using a lever belt squat like Fringe Sports Mammoth, you won't have to load as much weight, although with these long weight horns, you could load any amount of weight you wanted. The real appeal of the Rhino to me is in how much you can do with it, and that's an advantage it has over something like the Mammoth Belt Squat or the Squat Max. Both solid options depending on your budget and goals, but in a home gym, versatility is king, and the Rhino takes the crown there. You can perform a broad range of lower body movements on this, but why stop there? I am not a particularly creative person, and with 3 gremlins to help raise, I don't have a ton of time to tinker during my training, and I've still found a lot of different ways to use the Rhino. I can't say they all worked well or that I actually do all this stuff in training, but it's much better to have options than not, which is why I bought the version of the Rhino trainer with the functional trainer. This combination makes for an insane level of versatility. But let me explain how this works, because the level of engineering and attention to detail in the Rhino trainer is wild. Combining the Rhino with a functional trainer isn't as straightforward as it may seem. Imagine having to load up 7,000 pounds, like me, to squat, and then having to hoist that up into position. That would be a great way to hurt yourself. Although, on the plus side, you'd never have to do legs again. Well, with the Rhino, you can start with it loaded at the top of the movement. When the trolley is set high, meaning not at the bottom, there's very little tension in the cable, so you can get into position safely and easily. Release the trolley though, and there's tension throughout the movement. Here's the thing, all other cable systems start with the weight at the bottom. So how do you keep tension on the cables when you're bouncing between two different starting positions? Rogue has created a counterweight system that only engages when you set the trolley up high. I took the side window off so you can see it better. Anytime the counterweight isn't needed, it stays out of the way, which is important because if it was bumping into the other pulleys, you'd feel that during a rep. So they've integrated all these cable systems into each other without one getting in the way of the other. It's a great example of the advantage Rogue has over other companies that import their equipment. Rather than shipping prototypes overseas and waiting months, if Rogue needs to tweak something, they just walk to their engineers and can continue walking down to their manufacturing facility to quickly iterate and fix things. It's impressive because this is pretty smooth too. The more complex a pulley system is, the more friction you'll introduce, but Rogue is using high quality components throughout. The bearings on the aluminum pulleys are great, and I'd probably give this an 8 out of 10 on the smoothometer, which is a rating system and term I just made up. Admittedly, I've been spoiled by Rogue's twin stack. That is the smoothest system I've ever used. It's a 10 out of 10. The Aries or Athena is probably a 9 out of 10, but if I didn't have all of them side by side, I doubt I'd notice or care much about the differences. The Rhino functional trainer trolleys use what I call a hybrid 2-to-1 pulley ratio, which means when pulling one side, you've got a 2-to-1 pulley ratio. So you're pulling half the weight you've loaded, but have twice the cable to work with. The Rhino trolley weighs about 27 pounds. So with the functional trainer, you've got a starting weight of about 13.5 pounds, which admittedly is a bit high for my wife, but that's true of every single rack integrated system we've reviewed so far, which is why our Voltra is installed on the side of our twin stack. Because this is a plate-loaded device, you can load whatever weight increment you want, which is great for micro-loading. When using both hands, since the sides are connected through a single weight source, you have a 1-to-1 pulley ratio, which cuts your cable travel in half, but that hasn't really been an issue for us as you still have over 5 feet of cable travel on a 90-inch tall rack. Having a single weight source does have some drawbacks though. 2 people can't use this at once since the 2 trolleys are linked, and it means when using both sides, your arms are linked, which works better than it sounds. I still feel equal resistance in each arm, so if I have 50 total pounds loaded, each arm would feel 25 pounds of weight, and you can still do unilateral exercises if you want. Overall, it works well as a functional trainer, and the trolleys are the best example of the build quality of Rogue's system. They probably could have made these a little bit smaller, but in America, we do things big even when it doesn't make perfect sense. We've seen dozens of trolleys, but these are by far my favorite. The rollers help them to move smoothly and easily, even though they're heavier than most, but that weight is countered by Rogue's dual handle trigger system. There's a lot of subtle touches that set these apart, from the UHMW on the front of the trolley, to the knurled stainless steel handles, to the fact you can adjust the fit of the trolleys to your uprights so they fit perfectly. Is some of that over the top? Sure, but against something like Rep's trolleys, the quality difference is easy to see. And with the Rhino trainer, as an American-made product with a price tag like this, you have certain expectations. And once you see one of these in person, you'll be blown away with how well designed and built it is. Another great example of that attention to detail is in the packaging and assembly. Typically, I don't go too in-depth with our thoughts on assembly because we do builds like this all the time. After we put the kids to bed, my wife's favorite date is spending all night in here with me building gym equipment. I think Rogue's done the best they possibly can to make this at least as simple as it'll ever be. It is a complex build though. You are combining a lot of functionality. So if you want to race Winnie and my 4-hour build time, go for it. Just make sure to accidentally drop a chunk of 3x3 steel on your husband's head for authenticity. True story. They've created a clear set of instructions and have assembly videos, but it's the little things like having a series of colored and numbered stickers showing you which way to route the cables and them using monster strips to organize the tools and hardware that add up to make this as straightforward an assembly as possible. Just look at Winnie elegantly showing that strip off. It makes it hard to imagine how she almost killed her husband during the build. The packaging is fantastic, and components like the Rhino trolley and functional trainer trolleys all come fully assembled. One thing I should note is Rogue says this needs to be anchored down. And while I'm sure you could just add front extension feet, I didn't read the directions, so mine isn't anchored. Now, I'm not taking on any liability here. I would never say otherwise, but I did a few pretty normal tests and mine hasn't budged. It's rock solid. The Lat Pulldown works well. I've got plenty of space to get a full range of motion. I can pull straight down. Even though it looks a little cramped with the Rhino platform right here, it's really not bad. Although if I had the option, I'd have extended the depth a little. Alternatively, you could use Rogue's multi-use roller or your spotter arms to push you back a little. That being said, the lat pull works great and the lat bar Rogue includes is fantastic. I bought the stainless version years ago and we've got the E-coat one as well, and up against others I've used, Rogue's is easily the best. It's fully knurled, the knurling is clean and grippy, and overall the bar is just exceptionally well made. It's easy to swap between the various pull points because everything works off a single weight source, which also makes it easy to load since I'm not loading multiple sets of weight horns. I do prefer selectorized systems for their ease of use, and while I really like the Aries and find the dual pull points to be very versatile, I also never link or unlink them because it's a bit tedious, and with Rogue systems I don't have to fiddle around connecting stacks. So swapping from lat pulls to rows or whatever is seamless. Well, that is, as long as you remember to set it up before you load it. Ask me how I know. Unlike Rogue's twin stack or single stack, which have permanent low row systems, the Rhino trainers is removable so that you can take it off if it gets in your way. Installing or removing it is pretty easy and it takes less than a minute. Just like with the Rhino belt squat, it uses the counterweight system to remove tension in the cable so that you're not lifting the trolley while you set the cable into place. The counterweight also brings the starting weight of the belt squat, lat pull, and low row down to about 20 pounds, which is a nice touch because it helps keep plate math easy and it keeps the starting weight in line with what's become the standard for most other all-in-one systems. As quick as installing and removing the low row is, it is an additional step. And ideally, I just always leave it in place, which is what I do if I had more depth on my rack. Once on though, it's stable. Low rows on the Rhino trainer work very well. You've got enough cable travel to get a good stretch. The telescoping footplate is easy to adjust, so you can set it up perfectly for your build or depending on the exercise. And by using the angled footplate, you can row off a bench as well. The Rhino trainer packs a ton of functionality into a small space, but like every all-in-one, it has its trade-offs. Separate standalone options would be better, but do you have the space and money for a rack, functional trainer belt squat and lat pull down with a low row. I'd love for this to be selectorized and as smooth as my twin stack, but even that would have trade-offs. And yes, I did get Rogue to confirm they're working on a twin stack Rhino, but the Rhino, lat pull and low row would be plate loaded and they'd function identically to this. So maybe that's your ultimate build, but is it worth maybe around another $1,000 for a smoother functional trainer with selectorized stacks? And are you willing to wait potentially a very long time to see how well Rogue pulls that off? Because they're not exactly known for their speed. If you're not willing to wait, or the Rhino trainer is calling to you, it's very well done. I'm impressed. If the Rhino trainer isn't for you, then get ready for the most exciting hour of your life as you explore the other ways you can configure your Rogue rack in our single stack and twin stack reviews, because Rogue has built out quite the ecosystem. Thank you so much to our patrons for keeping this channel alive, and thanks for watching.